Good morning. My name is Ryan Bast of the Motor Safety Association, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on the COR Certification Process Explained. So no matter where you're listening from today, if you're at work or if you're working from home, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. You may have noticed that your microphone is muted, and it will remain muted throughout the duration of the webinar. However, if you do have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the question box. And once the webinar concludes, I will go through all of the questions and supply answers and email those back to the webinar attendees. So some of the things we'll look at today include an introduction to the COR program. I'll highlight the COR process from start to finish. And I'll also go through in depth the perception survey process, and we use this to maintain our certification audits, as well as we use surveys to allow people to participate when they're starting their safety program journey. And I'll also speak to the standards and quality control that we adhere to when it comes to our certification system. Throughout the webinar, if you come across some information, I'll speak around various policies and samples and templates. Those will all be emailed to the attendees at the conclusion of the webinar. So you won't have to quickly write everything down or make notes as you go. This webinar is being recorded live and it will be up on our website. And I also want to mention that the webinar today is not an advertisement promoting the COR certification program. Instead, it's meant to explain the process, as we have people who've been through it many times, people who are just going through it the first time, as well as people looking to learn more. So the end result is just to enhance the information and give you some resources to look at when it comes to the COR process program. So what exactly is COR? COR stands for Certificate of Recognition. And a certificate of recognition is awarded to businesses that successfully pass a qualifying safety audit by a certifying partner. And essentially, this is a safety audit that is done. And the certifying partner then conducts the audit and issues the certification. The MSA's Audit Tool meets the standards of the Saskatchewan Joint Industry Committee. And in May of 2007, the safety associations and strategic partners developed a guide for standards for health and safety programs and safety systems when it comes to conducting audits. And I will be sending you out a copy of that JIC standard once the webinar concludes. The Motor Safety Association, as a certifying partner, we conduct COR certification audits for our membership at no additional charge. So if you're in rate code C61 or C62, you would automatically qualify to participate in our certification program, as well as any of our other services at no additional charge. So as you can see, I'm not trying to sell you anything today. This is part of your membership already, full access to our program for audits and baseline audits, which I will speak to. But what exactly does an audit consist of? Three main categories. There's a documentation review, an observation of the facility, as well as a sampling of the staff being interviewed. So the letters D, O, and I represent those three categories within an audit. And I'll explain those further. The first one, D, is the documentation and record review. And some of the things that are listed on the slide are what we will be looking for when we conduct an audit at your facility. And instead of me going through and explaining each of these items, On our website, we do have a free online safety management system program, and this allows you to download samples, policies, and templates for each of the integral elements of a safety management system or safety program. But this does give you an idea of the things we're looking for documentation. And we'll also be sending you a documentation list to help prepare for an audit. So that list will be coming to you at the conclusion of the webinar, and it explains and itemizes the documentation types that we are looking for. So that list is good to take a look at and see what you have in place and what you may still need to develop or obtain for documentation or records. The next point is O, which represents the observation checklist. And the checklist is included in the audit tool, which you will be receiving today. This is a yes or no verification. So basically there's a checklist. We would take it through your facility and we would observe whether it be employee activities, your safety board, first aid kits, site maps, if people are wearing PPE, and it's just basically a yes or no checklist to each of the items on the observation. Each of the observation points do correlate to the elements within the core audit. So each of these observation items will match back within the audit tool. So this is a great thing that you can also print off to take to your workplace and check it off to see how you fare. And I tell a lot of the auditees that an observation is not an inspection. So the observation is we're just looking for the items on the checklist and answering a yes or a no. It's not a planned inspection type of walkthrough of the workplace where we're going through areas in great detail looking for specific inspection items. We're basically following an observation checklist that correlates to the audit tool. So that's a bit about the observations. Interviews, as you can see, we use an interview chart to obtain a sampling of your staff. And this chart will give us a guideline of how many people to interview. If you have 10 employees at your organization, we would be conducting 5 interviews, 3 workers and a manager and a supervisor to give us a total of 5. These interview questions are communicated in advance. You'll receive them today, and they're included in the back of the audit tool. And each interview takes approximately 20 minutes to complete. The majority of the questions are yes, no, with a couple of short answer questions. And we do let companies know in advance how many interviews we're doing so that they can prepare as well. So those are the 3 areas of the audit: documentation, observation, and interview. But there are some myths when it comes to COR certification. I spoke about people mixing up sometimes observations with inspections, and as well as inspections are sometimes mixed up with audits. People may believe one is the other. So the inspection is that planned walkthrough of the facility, but the audit is we're looking at your documentation, records, we're observing your facility based on a checklist, and we're interviewing staff. So unless we're doing those 3 items, it's an inspection. So documentation, observation, interviews make up an audit. Another myth includes you will not have any more WCB claims if you're COR certified. The fact is your business is not immune, and WCB claims can still occur whether you're certified or not. COR is a quick and easy process. That's also a myth. Companies that we've worked with generally, through their feedback, have told us that it takes approximately 3 years to implement their safety management system, have their culture evolve to the point where they can pass a certification audit. Some may have done it in less time, some have taken longer. But in generally, I've had the feedback of this has been at least a 3-year journey to get to being certified. Another myth includes if you've successfully passed COR in another province, you will pass here. And I've ran across this as we have some businesses that have locations, whether it be in Manitoba or in Alberta, and they may have been certified by a different industry partner out of province. And when they went to our audit, they may not have passed. So there is no gimme or no assurance that unless you prepare, listen, and take a look at the audit tool, you will be successful in obtaining that certification. Each industry partner and association does use a different audit tool. So if you've passed in out of province, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will pass here. But with that being said, we're here to support you, to help you, to ensure that you pass. So if you have been certified out of province, we provide you with the audit tool. We can sit down and meet with you and let you know what we're looking for and just to help you prepare for the audit process. So we're definitely there to support you in this journey. Whether you've been certified or not, that's something that we are committed to helping your organizations with. There are some benefits of COR certification. We see a demonstration of leadership. And a good example of this is really in the last few years, our association certified the first auto body dealership in Saskatchewan, the first car dealership, as well as the first towing company. And through this leadership, we're going to see others in those industries soon follow and catch up. So a demonstration of leadership is key. And when people make that commitment and showcasing and having their program audited to that COR standard. Benefits of COR can also include employee recruitment and retention. I've seen some employers, when they ran ads recruiting employees, that they itemize that's the fact saying, hey, we are COR certified, come work here. We will retain our employees because we are a safe employer. You may also see a potential reduction in WCB injuries, claims, and costs. Again, this is not an immune, that you're not immune or it's not a gimme that this will happen, but the potential is there if you have a effective implemented safety management system or program. And you also may see different pre-bid qualifications as a benefit of COR, as some vendors and government agencies only do business with certified companies first, and they look to see who's certified in order to procure those services from those businesses first if possible. A benefit includes identifying gaps in your safety program. So allowing a certified partner such as ourselves, we can look at your program and give you an action plan to help you build for continuous improvement and having your audits done. And if you have a baseline, we can assist you to prepare for that improvement as well. I did have a company that was certified indicate that they had received a property insurance discount on their property and buildings at their facility. So if you are certified, there's an opportunity. Check with your property and your business insurance to see if you in fact qualify for any additional discounts as the company did that was certified, which they explained to me. And you could see increased business activity as, again, some businesses prefer to do business with certified companies and look to do business with those companies first. So there's a good benefit. And some provinces have incentives for COR certification where you're actually issued a rebate. In Saskatchewan at this time, we do not have a rebate if you're COR certified or not. But some provinces do, however. So as you prepare for a certification audit, As mentioned, we have a document list which will be sent out today, as well as in advance of an audit. And this allows you to prepare. And once you've reviewed that list, you might say that, we're not ready for a complete core audit, but perhaps let's start with a baseline or a gap analysis audit. And what this does is this looks specifically at the areas of documentation and observation. So we would go through your facility, let you know what your paperwork, your records look like, and observation of your facility, and provide you with an action plan to move and to evolve your program so that you're ready for an audit. So getting that documentation list, seeing where you are on that list, will let you know where you fit in this journey. But essentially, implementing and functioning a health and safety management system is essential in passing a certification audit. We need to see at least 3 months worth of documentation readily available to the auditor at the time of the audit. A great example is if your business just was a new startup and came into business March 1st, we're not able to certify you until you have 3 months' worth of documentation and records at your facility. And once you have that 3 months of documentation and records available, you would need to complete a request for an audit recertification form for each location that's going to be audited. So if you have multiple locations, we use this sampling guideline chart to determine which locations to audit. For example, if you have 7 locations, we would select 5 of those locations to audit. We can, however, do all 7 if that's what you're requesting, but it is a minimum of 5 of those locations that would be audited. And what this looks like is, this is based on your WCB number. So if all 7 locations are under that WCB number, it would fall under this chart. If all 7 locations had their separate WCB number, they would be separate audits. But for the most part, for a lot of the groups and organizations we're with, their locations are in fact grouped under one WCB number. So in this example, with 7 stores that fall under the same WCB number, we would do a minimum of 5, and we would need an audit request for each of those 5 locations. And out of those 5 locations that we select at the MSA, the head office will always be included in that audit cycle. So every time we would do an audit, which is 3 years, the head office is always included. And the other 4 locations to give us 5 are selected, looking at logistics, perhaps the last time they were audited, will help us to determine which locations to audit. Out of those 7 stores, the 2 locations that weren't audited, we would cycle those into a future audit to ensure that they do get that feel or that touch point from us as far as being audited. Sites with 3 or more staff are considered as an audit location. So if there's less than 3 staff at your location, it's optional. So not saying we can't audit that place if there's 2 people or 3 people. And I actually ran into this a few years back where we had mapped out an audit plan for various locations, and logistics made sense. I was going right past this store. It had 2 people that worked there. So I did an interview of the worker at that store. So they were involved in the audit. So that's something, again, that we look at, and this is all done in advance. So we do an audit plan so you know what to expect. I don't just drive by and show up at this place and say, hey, surprise, I'm doing an audit today. The locations are all communicated in advance, so everyone knows what's going on. I want to really emphasize this point because we get a lot of questions on this. All sites being audited must successfully pass the core audit standard for the company to receive certification. Okay, so out of those 5 stores or locations, if 4 of the 5 pass, your business is not certified. All sites have to pass that are being audited. So once that 5th site passes, then the locations under that WCB number will then be certified. And what happens is, so to give you an example, let's say on January 27th, we conducted 5 audits of your locations. 4 passed, 1 did not. So we have a 3-month wait period. So after that 3-month wait period, we could conduct the re-audit of that last location. And once that last location passes, that is the new audit cycle date. So once that last audit passes, it would be the new audit date moving forward in the cycle. Further to that, when we go to that last location, it's not a complete audit from start to finish. We're just re-auditing what was missed. So if the inspection element didn't meet the standard, that's what we would be re-auditing. Okay, so it's not a complete audit start to finish. It's the location that didn't meet the standard on the elements that were missed or element. And once that is successful in a pass, all of the locations within that WCB number, those 7 stores will then be certified. And if it happens on March 27th, 3 months from the previous audit, that will be the cycle date. So I hope that's explained thorough, because we do get some questions and the odd bit of confusion around that. So to kind of reiterate that plan, MSA receives the audit request and develops a core audit plan for each location that's being audited. If there are those multiple locations, we decide and communicate based on logistics with the previous chart as to which stores will be audited. On the audit plan, we provide you with an outline of the times of the audit activities to exist at and what time the activities will start. So generally, we will say that we arrive on site at this time and we will conduct an opening meeting. We will then do documentation review, which I like to allow potentially 3 hours to go through that documentation review, maybe an hour or 2 for the observation, and a couple of hours, maybe more, maybe less for the interviews, depending how many interviews we have to do. But generally, once we arrive, we have the opening meeting and start with reviewing the documentation, which we're looking at the records and each of the elements within the safety program and in our audit tool. So on this screen here, you can see all of the 19 elements which are included in our audit tool. For the sake of the webinar, I'm not going to explain each of the 19 elements in depth. I mentioned we do have a free online SMS program for our members, which allows you to build a safety program, and there's a lot of great downloadable templates and samples and policies to help you in your journey to certification. And we're also available absolutely to be there to help your business meet that certification standard. And you can refer into the audit tool that will be coming out at the conclusion of the webinar on each of these 19 elements, as well as contact us if you're not sure what we're looking for in that audit tool. So again, we're going to go through those elements. We need the auditee to have somewhere private that we can go through the documentation and records, and especially for the interviews to occur. We can't be sitting in the couch in your showroom interviewing your staff members because the interviews are private, and we need to respect that privacy and confidentiality when we are doing those certification interviews. So a private room is great, it's appreciated. I also love, and I'm sure all of the auditors do, when the companies prepare for the audit. I've had companies, they've laid out their program, their completed meeting minutes, completed inspections, all this stuff. They got it tabbed with post-it notes. Incredible. That stuff really helps the audit move along nicely, and it really helps people prepare and helps us get through the audit. So that's much appreciated for the companies that do that. Sometimes companies will give us boxes of all the paperwork and say, have at it, and that works out great. I know what I do is I go through what I can find and I make a short list, and I ask the company, hey, come check in on me like every half an hour is a minimum, or whenever you can. If you can't, in fact, sit with me throughout this process, and I give them a list and say, okay, I went through what you had. I need to see some orientations. Go bring me some, please. And so I've got someone kind of bringing documentation and records in and out. So every auditor does it a bit differently, but again, we review those documentation and records and put it into the audit tool. Once we're done that, we get up and do the observation of the facility. And what we're doing is we're using that observation checklist, looking at the activities. We're also checking various things. So I may have looked on your safety committee meeting minutes, and it said that this item was completed and carried out. So I'm going to take a look at that and to see if you're actually doing what you're saying you're doing. And that's what the audit process looks like from the observation perspective. As mentioned, we conduct the sampling of interviews, managers, supervisors, and workers. We select who's going to be interviewed. We usually try to get someone who is fairly new to your organization, someone who's been there for a while. If you're at a dealership, if you got someone in parts, sales, or service, or if you're in a different type of business, we'll try to get people from different areas just to give you that good thorough sampling of the audit. So at that point, we would have done our documentation, our observation, and now our interviews. We'll kind of go over and check, do we miss anything? Is there anything else that we still need? And let the auditee know, hey, did you ever find this form I asked you for? Just to kind of give you a chance to make sure that you were able to provide us with everything that we asked for. Once we're done, we have a closeout meeting with the auditee and or site or location manager or representative. And the closeout meeting is not intended to say, hey, you passed or you failed or you got 93%. That's not what this is about. Instead, this closeout meeting is meant to let you know how the audit went, as far as the preparation aspect, let you know if we found anything that stood out that needs immediate repair, if we hadn't let you already know so, and more so to communicate what to expect next. So we'll tell you that we are now going to go and score the audit tool and get back to you with the audit report. And we thank them for the opportunity to be able to conduct the audit at their location. If the audit is successful, a certificate is issued, and the audit tool and audit report are reviewed with the auditee. This can be done in person, this can be done via mail, just based on logistics, of course. If the audit did not meet the standard, the audit tool and report is issued and reviewed with the auditee. So we're available to explain where they had came up short and provide suggestions on how they could in fact meet that standard after the 3-month wait period. So after 3 months, or just before the 3-month period, a company can submit an audit request requesting the re-audit for what was missed. So again, if inspections was missed, that's the only thing that we would need to re-audit in order for the business to be successful. There are 19 elements, which I mentioned earlier, and you need to get at least 60% in each of those 19 elements to pass, and an 80% overall score. I've actually had a business score in the low 80s. They got between 60 and 80% on each of the elements, and that was a successful audit. I've also had companies score in the high 90s or the mid 90s, but they may have got 55% on one element, and that's not a successful audit. Even though the score was greater than 80, you need to get that minimum of 60% in each element. So you have to do well, or 60% in each element, in order to be successful. If and when that all happens, a certificate like what you see on the screen is issued and valid for 3 years, permitting that the company completes its maintenance. And I'll speak to the maintenance in the coming slides. So what the cycle looks like: if the business was certified March 5th of 2020, they successfully completed a core external audit that the motor safety conducted at their facility or facilities. Before March 5th, 2021 of the very next year, the business needs to complete perception surveys for maintenance, as well as before March 5th, 2022, the business would also need to complete perception surveys to maintain their certification. And again, I'll be speaking to maintenance on the coming slide. And March 5th, 2023, permitting the business done all its maintenance, their certification expires, and the business would need to submit a new audit request to trigger a new recertification audit. And at that point, the cycle would continue exactly as you see on the screen. So it goes audit, survey, survey, audit, and so forth. All right. As mentioned, we use perception surveys for core maintenance. If you're not certified and you want to see what surveys are all about, we open up our perception survey program to any of our membership. They may want to see where they're at as far as their safety program and their safety culture, and this allows for their staff to give that input and complete a safety survey. We don't ask organizations to complete internal self-audits to maintain COR. We believe in the philosophy and have been utilizing perception surveys for maintenance. And I believe also that we're the only association nationally that uses perception surveys solely for certification maintenance. Some associations or certifying partners may use surveys, but we use ours again for maintenance for the audits. And we can use the surveys in other applications as well, but to maintain your certification, your organization needs to complete surveys. And we do this because it gets more frontline workers involved. It creates engagement, and it allows them to be participatory. And from any books I've read when it comes to health and safety, that's exactly what we want to do, and that's the outcome. We want more people involved, not someone in head office pushing out a safety program, which is part of an audit, of course, but those frontline workers, having people engaged and participatory in the process is the connection and the involvement piece that we have, which is unique in this survey process. And that's why we use this. It gives a snapshot of the safety culture of the business based on the perception of the staff members that completed the survey. Survey results are awesome. They're leading indicators of safety culture. So we're not waiting for something to happen as far as a internal audit where we're reacting to data. perception surveys measure that leading information, and we're able to communicate that to all the participants. So it's a proactive process. It allows for honest, anonymous input, getting everyone engaged. And this process works really well in maintaining certification. I'd like to weigh this as heavy, if not heavier, than an audit, because we're getting everyone involved in the process. It benchmarks the current state of your safety culture. So when you do this year over year, you can see, is your perception of the culture dropping? Is it increasing? Are we improving? So there are 40 statements in our perception survey. They take about 10 minutes or less each survey to complete. And what the process looks like is we contact the business, informing them that their core maintenance is soon coming due and they need to complete the surveys. So we send an anonymous online link with the perception surveys to the business, and they go through the surveys and they complete them online. So each person in their own privacy conducts the surveys, and once the surveys are triggered out to the people, we do need them to have at least 70% of their staff complete the surveys to maintain COR certification. It's not good enough if 10% of your staff completed surveys to maintain certification. As I said before, engagement, involvement, getting people participating in the process. So if we can have at least 70%, I'm not saying you can't have 100%, that'd be great, but we need the minimum of 70%. But I'll tell you, one area where we do run into the odd glitch in this process is if the businesses don't track who has completed the surveys. We know how many numbers you have completed, but if you phone in and say, hey, Ryan, did Bill complete the surveys? I'll say, I've got no idea. I can tell you that 7 people completed surveys at your store, but was Bill one of them? I'm not sure. So what we do is when we set these surveys up, we send the companies a sign-off sheet so they can use that sign-off sheet to track who has completed surveys to ensure that they meet that 70% or greater participation rate. And we communicate that throughout the process. I like to send weekly updates or give the companies an idea of, okay, we're halfway through the window when your surveys are due and it looks like you've only had 40% completion. You may want to send out another reminder. Once the surveys are done, we analyze the survey results, we develop a graph and action plan requirements. So essentially the graph correlates to the elements of a safety program. So at a glance, you can see what the overall perception is of each of the safety program elements. But we strategically look at the results and we develop an action plan based on the statements of the survey. So we will ask you to address, for example, this statement triggered a very low perception. It was the lowest scoring perception item in the survey by your staff. Why? Another statement had the largest gap between what workers thought and what management thought in their perception. Why? And so we cherry pick a few different statements and ask you to put 1 or 2 sentences, just a short little explanation of how you address that. So we make the action plan easy, we lay it all out, we put the statements in it, and we have a blank spot where you would put in a few sentences of how you addressed the action plan. And this lets us know the surveys were communicated. And that's an important part. People use their time to complete surveys. They want to know what was done. So take care of that low-hanging fruits when the surveys come back, look at those action plans and act on them. And this helps to ensure people participate and are engaged in the process if we act on those survey results. The action plan is required for your core maintenance. If you did the surveys, we still need that action plan back in order to keep your certification from going into suspension. So again, the certification process for surveys, even if you're not certified and if you're interested in the survey statements will be sent out to all of the webinar attendees today. And if you're interested in doing this, we'd love to set up an online survey for your staff, and you can see where the perception of the culture is at your organization. So I'll switch gears and talk a little bit about the standards and quality control that we adhere to for our audit process. The MSA Audit Tool and process meets the Provincial Joint Industry Committee standard. And I mentioned that standard came out in May of 2007, and our audit tool and our processes meet and follow that standard. Also, the Motor Safety Association is one of only 2 safety associations in Saskatchewan that participated in a volunteer audit, which was done by WorkSafe Saskatchewan, a division of the Workers' Compensation Board. So this quality audit consisted of an auditor coming out, going through our audit records, our files, our manuals, the way we do business when it comes to COR. And we were interviewed in that process, and that auditor gave us a list of recommendations saying how we can also improve. So of course we welcomed that auditor and that feedback, and we developed recommendations. One of them being we set up an industry-based committee that meets once a year to review our entire COR program and process. This committee met a few weeks ago on March 5th. A lot of them are participating on this webinar today, if not all of them. I'd like to thank them for this. This is an important process where we have that industry contact, where they give us input on our audit tool and programs, and we update that every year based on this recommendations and this feedback. And as a result of that, the attendees today will be receiving the newest documents and records that we use based on this recent review that happened earlier in the month. Another standard that we use is our auditors meet a code of ethics, and there's a process to be an approved auditor. This is all explained in our core process manual. MSA does not hire or use external auditors. MSA staff conduct the audits for MSA members using the MSA Audit Tool. I believe some associations or certifying partners, they may hire other people. This incurs costs. However, our staff meet a code of ethics, and there's a process to be an approved auditor, and we're able to conduct those audits, again, at no additional charge. Once those audits are completed, the MSA audit documents are reviewed by the executive director or a designate for quality. So was the audit done fairly? Is it scored correctly? Is it accurate? So it's reviewed in-house just to ensure that it does meet the quality process. Something else pretty cool that we had done last year is we had our perception surveys validated and qualified by the University of Regina's Center for Business Management. And they looked at the injury data for COR certified companies. So those injury rates correlated them to perception survey results and COR scores, and looked at each of the statements within the audit, each of the statements within the perception survey, to let us know, are these surveys, are these statements, I should say, pardon me, effective? Is this statement giving you an accurate result? So as a result of that validation, a few statements, we had removed a few things, we've added a few statements. Long story short, our surveys are updated, current, with our current audit tool and with our safety management system, and they have been validated and reviewed by the U of R. So again, that was a unique process just to ensure that these things are being maintained for quality. The MSA certification for COR is recognized provincially in Saskatchewan only. We do not have a national certification across Canada. With that being said, we do not recognize other safety association or industry partners certification for our membership, and they do not recognize ours as well. The MSA COR audit and certification process does, however, meet the requirements of third-party screening agencies, such as IS Networld, Avita. These contractor vendor screening agencies do recognize our audit program for companies that are certified. Also, MSA and other COR certifying partners can only issue COR certification for its members in the assigned rate codes. And this is kind of new. This change is currently underway. This is intended for industry associations, certifying partners to focus on their own rate codes and certify companies within their rate codes. So again, those are some of the standards and quality control pieces that are in place when it comes to certification. As promised, you will receive the various resources will be sent to you at the conclusion of the webinar. The JIC standard, the process map, which includes the audits via step-by-step. You'll also receive the up-to-date process manual, which explains a lot of this information in more depth and gives you a good read. You'll also receive the document list, and whether you're going for an audit or not, I encourage you to take a good look at that list. These are the kind of things that an OHS officer may ask you for if they come on site. These are the kind of things you should have available. So take a look at that list, whether you're going for certification or not. You'll see the COR audit request form as well as the audit plan template to let you know what those two documents look like. The request triggers the audit. The plan is what we complete, itemizing what the audit will look like over a timeline. You'll also receive our COR Audit Tool. This looks at what are the documentation and record requirements. The observation checklist is in here, as well as the interview questions. Print it out, have some fun with this. Take it to your safety committee. You can use this internal, see where you measure up. You can use the observation questions in a toolbox talk and have somebody go through your facility and do an observation based on the checklist. You can use all of this stuff. Same with the surveys. If you would like the surveys done, you will see what the survey statements look like. And again, we're able to set up that process online for you. So stay tuned. Watch your inbox for these sample templates that will be coming to you as mentioned. You will also receive a webinar certificate template indicating you participated in today's educational webinar. And you'll also see a short survey evaluating the webinar. And one of the questions in the survey will be suggestion for future topics. And I encourage you to suggest a future topic for the webinar. But I just ask, if you're providing a future topic, perhaps maybe give a sentence or two explaining what you're looking for in the webinar. And this helps us to know what type of webinar you're looking for so that we can develop a webinar that meets your needs. So please Give us those future topics. Tell us what you're looking for so we can deliver on a webinar to meet those needs. If you like today's webinar, it'll be on our website, as well as our complete webinar library is on our website, which you can review anytime. So I'll give you another minute here to type in any questions that you may have as we went through the webinar today. And if you prefer to talk to us in person, pick up the phone. Our number is listed on the screen. Any of our safety advisors are available to help you through the COR certification process and answer any of your questions. You can also email us at the email address provided on the screen, as well as check out our website. All the COR information is on there, including the list of our COR certified companies can also be found on that website as well. So again, some resources to use. Watch your inbox. There's going to be some templates coming your way very quickly based on the webinar. So with that, if everyone's entered any of their questions into the question box, I'd like to really thank you for taking the time to join me in today's webinar on the COR Certification Process Explained. Thank you.